Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin, and today we're going to be doing the Evga Classified GTX 780 against the Sapphire R9 290 Vapor X. So this will be quite interesting. A lot of people say that a good 290 will beat a GTX 780, or they're very, very close. So that's what we're going to be finding out here today, if that is true or not. But first, we'll just give you guys a brief rundown of the differences between these two cards. So, completely different GPUs, obviously. One's NVIDIA, one's AMD. It's a GK110 chip on the GTX 780, which is the same one you'd find in the 780 Ti, Titan, things like that. And the Hawaii chip on the R9 290, which is the same one you find in the 290X. They're both slightly cut down versions of their big brothers, the 780 Ti for the 780 and the 290X for the 290. But they still have a lot of power there. They're definitely not slow. Different clock speeds. So the 290, the Vapor X 290 is quite easy. It's a 1030 megahertz clock speed on the GPU. But with the Evga Classified GTX 780, it's a bit different. So NVIDIA has GPU Boost 2.0, which is kind of like an auto overclocking type thing, and it works off the temperatures. So even though it's claimed and it's listed for the GTX 780 classified that it will boost to 1046 megahertz, when I was testing it, it was boosting all the way up to 1123 megahertz. So about 100 megahertz bump up there for the GTX 780 over the Vapor X 290 in this particular one. Now, once again, why people say, why don't you clock them the same? Well, all these NVIDIA cards are going to come with GPU Boost 2.0. I don't know why you would turn it off, aside from if you're obviously going to just do your own overclock and go really high, in which case the results would be even more better for this GTX 780 in this testing. But yeah, so obviously it's just one of those things that you're going to just have to deal with. NVIDIA does have it and AMD doesn't. That's the end of the story. Now, there's also different memories. So the GTX 780 is sitting on a 384-bit memory bus with 3 gigabytes of GDDR5, whereas the R9 290 Vapor X is sitting on a 512-bit memory bus with 4 gigabytes of GDDR5. So bit of a win there for the 290 in terms of memory bandwidth and overall memory. Difference in memory speeds too. So the GTX 780 classified is coming in with a memory speed of 6000 megahertz. Remember, that is on a smaller bus though. Whereas the Vapor X 290 is coming in with a memory speed of 5600 megahertz. So, and that's quite high considering that the reference memory speed of a 290, which is the same, the exact same memory that they use on the 290 is 290X and the same speeds, is 5000 megahertz. So quite a big bump up there in memory for the Vapor X. Now let's talk about the individual cards a little bit more. So the Evga Classified GTX 780 has a reinforced base plate that's sort of to help lower VRM temperatures and things like that, and also allows a denser heatsink fin arrangement. It has ball bearing fans, and they put a lot of emphasis on the fans on the Evga Classified GTX 780. So it's got a very, very well designed fans. Apparently they're incredibly light and very, very strong, so you shouldn't be having any sorts of issues with them at all. Now the Vapor X is basically I'm just keeping it brief by the way. The Vapor X is very similar to the Tri-X. It's basically the same cooler except with upgraded heat sinks and heat pipes and that with their Vapor X technology using vapor chambers. The Vapor X also has upgraded components just like the Evga Classified 780, upgraded chokes and things like that. It also has the coloring on the side there, so blue for low temperatures, I think it's up to 60 degrees Celsius. Then it's a kind of like orangey yellow from 60 to 80 degrees, and then 80 degrees up it turns red, which is actually quite hard to do on this card because the cooler is so good. So it is that, and it also has their smart fan technology where you can set up so when it's under 60 degrees, I believe, well, it's still blue, there's only one fan going, so the center fan will go. Once it goes above that temperature, all 3 fans will kick in like normal. So that's just to keep noise down, which is another good thing. Size wise, the GTX780 Classified is coming in at 279 millimeters long by 111 millimeters wide, and I couldn't actually get the height of it. I should have measured that myself, but I never got around to it, so I can't actually give you the height. Sorry guys. The Vapor X, on the other hand, I couldn't find it anywhere, not even on EVGA's website. Maybe I'm blind. The Vapor X 290, on the other hand, comes in at 305 millimeters long, 114 millimeters wide, and 47 millimeters tall. So now that that's all over the way, let's get into the benchmarks, what you came here to see. So we'll start out with Firmark. So this is 1080p, 4x MSAA, and I run this for 15 minutes. The EVGA Classified GTX780 Ti scored 51 frames per second. The R9 290 Vapor X from Sapphire scored 37 frames per second. Now, Firmark always seems to do really good. The NVIDIA cards do really good on Firmark, so that's probably to be expected. Now let's get into Unigine Valley. This is on the Extreme HD preset. The EVGA Classified GTX780 scored 66.8 frames per second. Good effort there, stayed over 60. The R9 290 Vapor X scored 61.4 frames per second there, so about a 5 frames win for the GTX780, so quite impressive. The Unigine Heaven 4.0. This is DirectX 11, everything maxed out. The EVGA Classified GTX780 scored 57.5 frames per second. The R9 290 Vapor X scored 54.3 frames per second. And Heaven again, this is an OpenGL, everything maxed out. The Classified GTX780 scored 54 frames per second. The Vapor X 290 scored 38.7 frames per second. And an OpenGL and NVIDIA cards always pull away. Now let's get into the games. This is where it counts. So, Tomb Raider, this is often seen as a favorite for AMD cards. Tomb Raider, this is everything maxed out without VSync, 1080p. The EVGA Classified GTX780 Ti, 82.2 frames per second. The R9 290 Vapor X, 79.7 frames per second. So it got a lot closer at that time, but couldn't quite edge the GTX 780. And finally, Bioshock Infinite. This is using user setting 2. The EVGA Classified GTX 780 scored 115 frames per second. The R9 290 Vapor X scored 96.5 frames per second. So a big win there for the GTX 780. So what can we tell for this? Well, this has been true for a while, I think, and it's something I've noticed. The whole concept of, this is at stock, remember. We're not talking about overclocking. Stock. Generally, GTX 780 Ti's will edge out 290s at their stock speed. When you overclock them, it can, depending on how good of an overclocker you get, it can bring them quite a bit closer. If you get a really good overclocking 290, you can really start cranking up those speeds up to things like 1200 megahertz. That'll really start pulling them close together. But at stock speeds, generally the GTX 780 will win, but it's pretty close. Overclocking is a different story. Now let's get on to temperatures. So everyone goes on about 290s and 290Xs, how hot they are, so this might surprise you a little bit. So up first was Firmark. So I took the highest temperature I saw during the benchmark and the highest fan speed I saw. So the GTX 780 from EVGA went up to 77 degrees, and that was at 61% fan speed. So the fans are getting a bit up there. It's not too bad, not too bad. The R9 290 Vapor X in the same benchmark went up to 73 degrees Celsius, and that was at 42% fan speed. So lower temps there. That Vapor X cooler is really impressive, and at a lower fan speed. So I also took the temperatures in the Heaven test, this Heaven 4.0. This is the DirectX 11 test, and the GTX 780 classified by EVGA went up to 68 degrees Celsius, whereas the R9 290 Vapor X from Sapphire went to 70 degrees Celsius. The 780 went to 68, I'm sorry. If I said that before, I can't remember. So yeah, 2 degrees hotter for the Vapor X there. That's a bit interesting, eh? I don't know why that is. Maybe just the Heaven benchmark doesn't stress it as much. Generally, if it's higher in Firmark, it's higher in the Heaven. But this time is a bit different. So not really sure what's going on there, but they're relatively close, you know, maybe 2 to 4 degrees within each other in terms of thermals. Now to noise. So as always, I'm going to let you guys decide this for yourself. Personally, I'll just throw my own personal opinion in there. I thought both of them were very quiet and very good in this sense in noise, so there shouldn't be any complaining. But I'll let you guys decide for yourself. So I took the noises when they're in idle, and then when I was doing the Unigine Valley benchmark. So this is what the GTX 780 classified from EVGA sounds like at idle. And this is what the Vapor X R9 290 sounds like at idle. And here they are again. This is with both of them during the Unigine Valley Extreme HD benchmark. So here is the GTX 780 Ti during the benchmark. And here is the R9 290 Vapor X during the exact same benchmark. So I'll let you guys decide if there's much difference there. Personally, I didn't really notice much difference myself, just using it, but that's just my opinion. Now, to the conclusion. So, which one do I recommend is better? Well, it's kind of odd timing that I released this review today because the GTX 980 just came out. But there's obviously, you know, a lot of people that will still be interested in the 780. So pricing might change in the future just because that new GTX 980 just launched, honestly, just a few hours ago. So, yeah, this will be interesting in the future. They're both very close. I'd say if it's, you know, if the EVGA Classified GTX 780 is more than, I'd say personally, maybe $50 more than the Vapor X 290, then I'd say go with the Vapor X because it is quite close, and I'd overclock the Vapor X and it will bring them very close together. If they're the exact same and you're not going to overclock, then I have to give it to the GTX 780. So this Showdown is a win for the 780, but I'm putting that disclaimer with it. That if you're going to overclock, then I'd start to reevaluate things in terms of the price difference. And if it's more than $50 more for the 780 than it is for the Vapor X 290, then, and you are interested in overclocking that, say go with the Vapor X. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's Friday here in New Zealand, so let me know in the comments below what you guys have planned for your weekend. I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing.
Pop it, drop it and lock it. I see you heading south, baby girl, don't stop it. Move it, then shimmy the shake round, girl.
Watching the League of Legends World Championship, as that's just started, and I'm a big fan of League of Legends. But let me know in the comments below what you guys are going to be up to over the weekend. And as always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll be bringing you more content very soon. So thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time on Tech Showdown.